Did you know that former US President Donald Trump and President Richard Nixon are two peas in a pod? Dodgy behind-the-scenes political drama and scandals point fingers in the direction of the two being quite similar. Could they be cut from the same cloth? Well, let's take a closer look. Blasting the press. The press, or modern-day media, was a thorn in the side of two US leaders. Blasting the press was a favorite pastime of both. Skeleton in the closet or a closet full of skeletons. The two leaders had pressing needs to launch a barrage of attacks on the press. Each had a bucket load of political dirty laundry that they didn't want to air, and both were full of hot air. To say that Nixon hated the press is an understatement. Consider Nixon's unfriendly advice to Henry Kissinger, the national security advisor under his rocky tenure. Nixon made his position on the matter absolutely transparent when he revealed who his real enemies were. We'll give a hint. Their names start with P and E. Check your silly thoughts, he simply meant the press and establishment. He wrapped up professors with the same cloth and called them the enemy too. Looks like his vocabulary was limited to the concept of foes and adversaries when it came to describing the press. In case you're wondering what transpired during Nixon's wobbly presidency to invite such wrath against the press, let's go back into history. All hell broke loose when the Watergate scandal surfaced in the year 1973. Not known for mincing his words, Nixon took a heartless jab at a crowd of gathered reporters. He taunted that they couldn't provoke his anger because only those whom he respected possessed such an ability. Ouch. This one was a hate-hate relationship. The reporters had a ball of a time getting the inner scoop on the then president. In a complete media circus, pro-Nixon individuals tried to crack the code of these saucy leaks against the president by tapping the journalist's phone. This is quite a blast from the past. If you weren't hanging around on planet Earth during the years 1972 to 1973, let us fill you in. The Watergate scandal involved an illegal sneaky entry at the headquarters of the Democrat National Committee in Washington, D.C. by the Nixon administration. What followed was a series of attempts by the president and his government cronies to keep the entire sordid affair under wraps. How super sneaky. We get the same sense of deja vu from Donald Trump's acidic remarks against free media. True to form, former US President Donald Trump also had some choice words to say to the media during his stint as the President of the United States of America. Taking a leaf from Nixon's book, Trump has launched his own tirade against his enemy number one. Yup, you guessed it, the media. So, what was Donald Trump's pressing need to push the press down with a vengeance like no other? What did the press do to invite his wrath? Well, let's just say that hell had no fury as Donald Trump scorned. Trump, with his own bucket load of half-truths and fabrications to conceal, couldn't have a minor inconvenience like the free press busting his cover. Of course, he needed to rake up all kinds of rhetoric to sell this to his unique brand of supporters, those who voted him into power. Not the most brilliant tactician, Trump had his own ulterior motives to cover up his administration's tracks. After all, you can't expect someone to run a country when news of their admin's shoddy mismanagement, dodgy bloopers, and a whole host of facts that just didn't add up are plastered all over the news. Good grief. Media houses had a field day and opened innings when it came to running down President Trump's presidential policies and practices. So, what was President Trump's go-to strategy to save his crumbling presidential empire that was built on hate-mongering? Come on, suspending immigration from 7 predominantly Muslim countries and resignations of his national security advisor after discovery of a dicey narrative regarding his Russian contacts are not minor blimps on the radar. Well, he did what any wheeler dealer would do. He tried to make a dent in the media's credibility to have his own way with the public. And boy, oh boy, did he go public with his agenda. According to some political pundits, he even trumped Nixon. He raised a finger at the media for fulfilling the interests of those who sought to make hay while the sun shone from a broken system. Now, let's compare the two presidents when it comes to foreign policy. Are the decisions of Trump and Nixon politically intertwined? Are they political twins? Well, not quite. However, there are some resemblances between the two. First of all, Trump has never been a huge fan of the burden that the United States had to shoulder in terms of being the big guy on the economic global stage. There has definitely been a huge cost that the United States had to pay for being the leading military power in the world as well. Trump played his cards well in recognizing the tidal wave of lopsided costs that the US had to bear the brunt of while playing global leader and policeman. Hey, it's a tough job, but someone has to do it. And it looks like Trump was the right person to push for America's new, well, sort of new foreign policy vision. One that was centered less on toppling regimes and deposing dictators all over the world, less meddling in the internal governance of other countries, and a more restricted role. In fact, Trump had a vision of a robust and strong America that was a flag bearer of freedom, but just not in its usual style. Sounds good. Take Afghanistan, for example. Trump put his weight behind America's disengagement from its Afghan adventure. Instead of beating the war drums, Trump definitely took a more zen approach. In the years 2017-2018, Trump tried to pull out all the stops to broker talks with the Taliban in order to reach a resolution to the path of negotiation rather than violence. Impressive. Looks like President Nixon was reading the same charter that Trump read later. He didn't want America to remain buried knee-deep in the sea of global conflicts. In fact, he wanted to curb America's role when it came to strategic positioning on the global stage. It was President Nixon who was up for table talks with Hanoi, and worked hard to push for a dialogue so that the US could pull out of Vietnam, and that was pretty good going. He even went as far to question America's allies' role when it came to their own security, by making sure that they didn't slack off and rely on the big brother America to do all of the dirty work. They had to take care of their own business, and what a business. According to research by Harvard University Belfer Center, US GDP grows every time a conflict involves US arms companies. The result of this is an enrichment of the US to the detriment of all other states, Western and NATO included. But that's another story. Let me know in the comments if you'd like an in-depth look at this. And by the way, while you're here, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to stay updated. Other impressive feats in President Nixon's list of accomplishments are getting on friendlier terms with its arch-nemesis China, and even cooling off tensions with Russia. Both Nixon and Trump need a boogeyman. We aren't talking about the boogeyman of the horror movie kind. Both the leaders have identified the Achilles heel of the American public, the human emotion of fear. Both Nixon and Trump gave the presidential office its own unique flavor. However, in this case, it left an aftertaste of anxiety and dread. Surprised? Few can forget Nixon's Law and Order campaign. Like an out-of-control vampire that continued to grow bigger and more terrorizing, the campaign continued to feed off the masses' fear. Nixon resorted to some pretty draconian measures to clamp a very tight lid on African-American protests, and the results weren't pretty. The campaign resulted in a loss of life and property, a horrific double whammy. Years later, steps in Donald Trump starts beating the drum to the same racist tune with some minor differences in the key players. Take Trump's vitriol against immigrants. If xenophobia had another name, it would be President Trump's questionable immigration policy that tore apart families and brought in a tsunami to fracture communities in the name of protecting America. A core center point of President Trump's political agenda was to pin down most, if not all, of America's existing difficulties on its immigration policies. Under Trump's rule as president, immigrants were scapegoated and singled out for shoddy treatment, with millions deported. Even those immigrants who were covered by temporary protected status and deferred action for childhood arrivals were also vehemently targeted. Sadly, this included many workers who were toiling hard to serve the American population during the coronavirus pandemic. If that isn't tragic, we don't know what is. Let us know your views about President Nixon and Trump's handling of American affairs. Do you agree about the similarities between the two? Hit follow for more valuable content, and until next time, take care.